I'm Lana, and I'm live. Well, for those of you who are tuning in after I'm live, you get to see me after the fact. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time tuning in, if this really resonates with you and the message is touching you, rubbing you, inspiring you in some way, if I put a smile on your face, please click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and make sure to subscribe and be on the watch for my videos. So, today's topic of conversation and what had been dropping in for me the past couple days. The other day, I was sharing my story. I was live on Clapper, and I was talking about what I had been experiencing in my last relationship. And my last relationship was a social media relationship. And you know, some people will say you shouldn't mix work and play and you shouldn't get involved and that all these social media relationships don't work out. Well, it depends on the level of healing of the individuals, and it depends on the collaboration between the two individuals, if they're competitive or if they are actually able to work together. Because I think most relationships, whether on social media or in the real world, are really all about how healthy are you? How healthy is your relationship? Are you healed going into the relationship? Or are you somebody who is still hurt, acting out your childhood wounds and competing with your partner as opposed to recognizing you're supposed to work together? Buddy, relationships are about relating and collaborating. Relationships are not about competing and seeing who's better than the other and who has more power over the other. Power control struggles within relationships and dynamics are perfect examples of unhealed wounds. If you feel the need to control your partner or try to manipulate or interrogate or bully or influence them to your will, that is an old trauma response. That is acting out the old survival tactics and coping mechanisms to get your unmet needs and wounds met. Because that's what we do. Trauma response is essentially the stress of and the fear of not getting your needs met. So when we are acting out in our relationships, it's not always about the other person. 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, they end up being on the receiving end of all of your trauma vomit, where you turn around and you are just acting out and role playing, whether they're conscious or not, whether you're conscious or not. Most people are totally unconscious to the traumas that they're playing out. And until you become aware of whatever that is, what is your driving force? What is your motivator? What is the influence that is being expressed from within you? The influence from your past upon your present, which steals you of the gift of the now. Because if we're still living out our old traumas, then we're not present. We're not in the now. We're living in the past. And so real life is showing up right here, right now, doing the best we can with what we have. Because when you don't have the best, you got to do the best with what you have. And if you are just in that fear, low vibration, resistant to what is, and not recognizing the gift and the blessings and being grateful for what you have, then you're going to attract more of the lack. You're going to draw more to you what it is you fear and what it is you have been replaying. It's a capitulation. It is the constant role playing. It is, we don't evolve if we continue to play out the same stories. If we are telling the same story about how we were disempowered as children, what do you think we live? We're reliving the story every time we tell it. On a physiological level, neurologically, it's in our cells. Our whole entire body gets into it. Our body demonstrates the discomfort and dis-ease of the mind. So if your mouth is flapping on about an old trauma response, an old story about what somebody did to you, about the pain you experienced, about the whatever it is you dislike, you're dissing your body, you're dissing the now, and you're lacking the ease and the grace and the recognizing of where you're at in this moment. You are no longer the person you were back then, but in some way, shape, or form, you seem to be spiraling out the same story, because sometimes we get stuck like a record player on repeat, for those of you who remember record players, or a CD that skips, circular. And the thing about that is until you become aware of it, you can't heal it. If you're in denial of it, but you're still talking about it, you haven't moved on, you haven't healed from it. But at the same time, what I wanted to express, because what I was saying in my video last night, somebody had commented about just letting it go. And I said, here's what I want you to understand, because I have no physiological attachment to the story I was sharing. What I was expressing was that in that particular relationship on social media, is I learned I had to have the experience of what it was like to be with a full-on narcissist, to recognize it out in the world. I have apparently been somewhat naive to some of these things. And yes, I have experienced narcissism, but never to the degree that I was living with. And the truth of the matter is that I know, and still do, is that when you tell your story from a place of neutrality, to share the story can actually inspire someone going through the same exact situation to where they go, wow, I hadn't considered that. That sounds exactly like what I'm going through. And it gives someone the inspiration and motivation to make changes in their life. So when we do share our stories, we write books, we vlog, we blog, we talk about it with friends. A lot of times we learn more about ourselves because when we're hearing our own words, we may actually hear something we might not have known before. So 95%, 85 to 95% of what you say is actually for you to hear. But sometimes when you're telling a story, someone's ears perk up and go, oh my gosh, something you just said just now just reminded me of something, and it triggered something in me that I can now heal. So never discount the ability to tell your past stories in such a way from neutrality that sharing it to inspire others who may need it to seek the change in their own lives. So sometimes people will think you're telling a story for attention, sometimes because they're feeling uncomfortable and they don't necessarily want to hear it. So that's more about them in some cases. And you have, the thing is we never know what anybody's going through. We only know from the level of which we ourselves are healed, whether or not we can hold another, that sacred space, the ability to listen, to clearly hold the space for another, is not to anticipate responding or reacting or offering suggestions of help or how to fix their situation. 9 times out of 10, people just want to be seen and heard. They're not there to seek your counsel unless they ask. And you have to be discerning, and you have to recognize and even ask the question, would you like some feedback? Or do you want me to just hold the space for you? Do you just need someone to listen? Like that level of compassion and that ability to be aware for the other person is so much more appreciated and respected by people than the person who immediately jumps in with solutions, offering advice that wasn't asked for. And so, with this said, the reason I wanted to come on was because the past week I've been talking about influence. And then it dawned on me after that video, again, like I said, I learned a lot by being in the social media influencer arena. And even before I partnered with my ex, with Ridiculously Authentic, I was already doing videos. I was already on MySpace prior and doing blogs. I used to write blogs all the time. So when I was on Facebook with my original account, as soon as Facebook opened up lives, when you could go live for the first time on Facebook, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to jump on this. I felt inspired to go live and to put myself out there because my blogs, when I write, I sometimes have so much information that pours through me. To me, to speak on a video is so much quicker than trying to formulate and then lose the message, because sometimes when you write, you go back over it and you end up rewriting it, and you may lose the essence of what was originally coming through. So to me, when I speak, you're getting the raw uncut and what channels through me from source and what's inspired from within and my intuitive sense, essence, as well as what it is I have experienced personally. So when I speak from my personal experience because that's all I know. But there's an intuitive hit to it. There's a whole mind, body, soul connection, all of my 5 senses, and my really just tapping into sometimes what I feel in the collective, what is coming up. And so social media, really, I'll be straight up. I learned a lot about the good and the bad. And it's a lot of freaking work. Don't ever look at any of these people and think, oh, they make it look so easy. Well, yeah, they make it look easy. But do you know how many hours, how much time, the video editing, the writing, the timing, the pictures, the scheduling, the sleepless nights, the up late, up early, just trying to exercise self-care and nurturing, that a lot of the influencers that are talking about taking care of your body and doing all these things, and to be an influencer, you're going against all that. And so like real life versus what you see is usually incongruent. Now, I'm not saying this is for everyone. I'm not saying everybody is like this. And in some cases, you have influencers that are fortunate because either they had the money, the backing, the support, or they just had people who were willing to help them, where you have someone helping, somebody doing the videos, doing the edit, they hire out. They're smart, because I believe in working smarter, not harder. That when you are good at something, it doesn't mean you have to do it all. And I know in my life, I've tended to do it all because of perfectionism and the idea that, well, I'm capable of doing it. But I also believe there's a certain point of wisdom in your life that you recognize, I may be able to do it all, but I don't have to do it all. And you start to appreciate and value your time, so you delegate and you hire people to make up for your time. Because you have to weigh the balancing scales are, where will my time be better afforded? Because time is invaluable. You can never get time back. So maybe you make up the videos and you pass it on to somebody else to put them together and actually collaborate them that way, take care of your thumbnails, take care of all your social media to make it easier on you. If you can just go raw and you can just do these videos and it's like immediate, like what I started doing now with YouTube is I do a thumbnail, I go live, I try to advertise it over on my Instagram, although it seems like I'm kind of shadow banned and silenced over there. I mean, I hate to say it. I said something to somebody today. I said, you know, I feel personally like because of my background and when you've worked in high clearance jobs, it's like you're watched. And so therefore I'm almost like, okay, well, I'm going to still do me. I'm still going to do what I can do because I know there are people out there that clearly I'm reaching and touching people, and that's all that matters. And so if my message only reaches 1 or 2 people and it serves someone in their daily life, I will continue to make my videos and do the best I can. But from the social media perspective, I also want to point out that when I first was approached by my ex-partner, he reached out and I was busy trying to get my retreat started. And that was my focus at the time in 2017. he reached out to me, and it probably took me about a week or two to even respond because I was busy with all the teacher trainings and the other stuff that I do in the community. And when he reached out to me, his comment was something like, he wanted to go live on my account and I would go live on his, and I didn't understand that because in my mind I was thinking, well, he's in North Dakota. How do you do that? I wasn't thinking about it from the perspective of its technology, and all you do is you exchange your account information. In fact, my mind wasn't there. And then I realized it and I was like, oh, that's what he means. And so we started collaborating that way. And at first, I thought he was on the same level as me because he was doing grocery hauls and he was juicing and he was doing all the healthy stuff. And I got the impression that, well, he's on that same level because he's talking about all this raw vegan and whole foods plant-based. And I know the way that he found me was through going into groups and subscribing to the same types of groups that I was subscribed to. And I learned over time working together with him because that's what we did. The different ways to gain followers and friend people and invite people together and to create that community and following is to get engaged in those other realms, in those other arenas. And so everything that I was doing, it seemed like he was doing too. But as I started working with him and after he came down here to Florida, I had invited him, and there was the romance in the background and all that. We were doing a lot of late night video calls and working hard at starting the group and creating the meal plan. And I mean a lot of sleepless nights and a whole lot of late nights, a lot of live videos, a lot of kitchen videos with me dancing and creating short videos. This was all before TikTok. And a lot of it was like silliness, to be playful, because I believe in the inner child. And it was everything that I resonated with, at least I felt I did. And then there would be some things that he would do that were on his level. But when he came down here, what I started to learn was, number one, he was claiming to be the social media guru, that he knew all the answers. He actually sounded and implied, he gave me the impression that he had access to special social media like applications and curating, like he had access. He made it sound like he worked or knew someone in Facebook, to be totally honest with you. What it really was is that what he was doing was he was learning through watching other influencers and copying things, copying videos and copying trends and copying posts from Twitter and across the different Reddit. And basically he was grabbing information across other platforms. And I didn't know this at first. And I've spoken about this in other videos, but I really wanted to make a video about the things I learned through working with somebody who was not on the up and up, who wasn't transparent, who wasn't congruent with my morals, my integrity. And that was one of the reasons we butted heads so much. It was because he wanted to rule the roost. He wanted to control. He didn't want to collaborate. He was very competitive. He wanted to tell me what to do. He didn't like when I asked questions. He would just be like, why do you have to ask questions? Why can't you just do what I say? I'm like, because I'm trying to learn where you're coming from, and maybe my mind works fast enough that I can create too. And then I would create something, and he'd get mad at me at first, and then he'd realize, actually, that was pretty brilliant. Imagine that. But he wanted to be the one in charge. He wanted to be in control. He wanted to act like and tell me that he was doing it for me and that he was the reason that I was the front and center, and that he claimed he was the one doing all the work, when in reality we were equally, and if in some cases felt like I was doing more. Yeah, he was on social media all the time, but he wasn't doing all the stuff that I was doing on top of the social media. He would sometimes hide out in the spare room and just be on the devices, just on the computer, and not always on our social media. Like he was very much, he was a Nazi type on our group, where he didn't want people sharing certain stuff, and I just let him control a lot of that stuff. But it was actually stressful for me, because he was like a loose cannon. If I disagreed with anything he said, he would pitch a fit and it would become this huge blowout fight. And that's because he wanted control. And that was out of a trauma response. And at the time, I didn't realize the level to which his trauma went deep. And I know this goes back to his family, and I don't know what he experienced when he was in the Navy, but I know it's all going back to abuse and childhood wounds. And instead of seeing me as a partner, he saw me as someone he wanted to control so that it made him feel like he had control of his own life. And that's a lot of times what people do. When they try to control you, it's because they don't have control over themselves. And I've been an adult for a very long time, and I don't like anybody telling me what to do. And when somebody tries to control me, when I'm the one taking care of all the basic needs and necessities of the home and everything, I mean, I was making the food, I was doing the videos with recipes. And not only was I making recipes and food for our group, for our social media, the page, the group, my personal, then also uploading to YouTube, and my write-ups were all my write-ups. I didn't steal any content from anybody. He would do some things. Sometimes he would post a picture with a write-up that wasn't mine. And I wasn't always happy about that. It was lesser of that, but enough of it that it didn't really jive or resonate with me. And if I did try to address it, he would fight with me, and he would take over all the admin controls. He would actually block me from all of our accounts. He would shut me down, kick me out of the group. And so the number of times that he did this made me realize how unstable he was, and that behavior in itself is toxic. If anybody, and then if I told him how I felt, he tried to make me feel bad for my feelings. Like, don't ever let anybody make you feel less than for being vulnerable and revealing. Like, your trust just to reveal your vulnerability, to have courage to express how you feel, should be honored by another person. If someone makes you tries to make you feel like shit for expressing how you feel, that's about them. They're making it about them because they're not strong enough. They're uncomfortable with you're not feeling good. Even though you may not be feeling good and you may feel uncomfortable expressing it, now they double whammy you. They try to make you feel bad for telling them how you felt. And that's not right. That's when you know it's time to get out. If you are ever in that type of relationship where that's a repeated pattern, you need to get the hell out of there for your safety and sanity. Because those types of people are loose cannons. And that's a narcissist. At its core, anybody who tries to make you feel unworthy of feeling, or that your feelings aren't relevant, honored, or even recognized, that in itself is because they don't honor their own feelings. And their discomfort with your discomfort is about them not honoring how they feel. So when they flip that switch on you, that's just telling you about them. So the other thing that I experienced was that there are a lot of influencers that will actually talk shit about other influencers. And I really dislike doing that. There were a couple times I did call a couple influencers out, and mostly because of the way that I had a couple influencers that I was friends with behind the scenes. They weren't real collaborative. They didn't promote me. And the thing that bothered me was they would promise to provide me with a product that I had paid for, and they never did. Or that I won a book from one person and they never sent it to me. Even though they actually revealed it on their social media and said my name and, oh, this book is going to Lana, you know. And then I had another one who, by hair products, the product wasn't working the way I know what it was. The product didn't arrive for like 2 months and I had paid for it. And I was just upset with the behavior because here I was promoting them and they weren't reciprocating. You know, like, to me, that's not collaboration. And so I called them out on my social media and I ended up blocking them. And most of that, the only reason I did that was because he recommended I do it in such a way. He goes, you need to do that. You need to call them out. And it was his stuff, not mine. Like, I didn't feel the need to do it. Although I was upset about it, I did express how unhappy I was with those two people. And he really was pushing me to do it because he was that kind of person, even though he didn't really have a reason to be that way. Other than with him, there was a lot of jealousy and envy. He was a big follower of Dan the Man, the regenerator, who I absolutely adore and love. I have been in the whole food, plant-based arena for I don't know how long, as well as the yoga community, book writing. There's been Date with Destiny, Anthony Robbins, personal development worlds. My original Facebook account before it got deleted was connected to all of the different arenas in my life, as well as my military, as well as my friends in Italy. I lost all of my contacts that I was connected with through there. I had all these people following, and I never understood if these people thought that I just disappeared, because, you know, not everybody comes looking for you. And because of the way that Tom pretty much acted like it was all him, and believe it or not, here's another thing about it all, is that he had a lot of people that followed him because they thought he was cute, they thought he was adorable, they thought he was this picture perfect sweetheart. Oh, he's so, oh, I really want to see him do well. And then there were a lot of people who followed him because they didn't like him too. And I would back him up, even though in some cases I shouldn't have. Like when he went to Hawaii, I never really agreed with some of the things he did out there. I have some questions in the back of my mind about his behavior with what happened and went down with William. I know if you know the stories behind all of this, then you may understand where I'm coming from with what I'm stating. Because to me, he had said certain things that just didn't sound right. And he wasn't 100% forthcoming with me and honest as far as I figured out over all that time. So from the start, when I invited him down, it was because I thought I'm going to be able to support him in a way that he doesn't have to pay the rent that he was paying up in North Dakota. But I never discounted him not being supportive and paying to help live here. And that was something that even when I tried to address it and have that conversation, he blew up at me. When I asked him, when he was still doing his social media, not his social media, he had a web design business. So he was doing both. I never told him he should quit his web design business. I don't know why he ever thought that that was something he should do. He wanted to go full on social media. He told me from the start, don't worry, we're going to get this to the point where we're barely going to have to do any maintenance. We're barely going to have to do any work with the group, and it's just going to be like a well-oiled machine. And we're going to make money off of it, and you can run your retreats, and we can get you set up for doing consults and one-on-ones and all this stuff. He made a lot of promises, and then what he did was he cut me off. And what I mean by that is, I saw from the start, there's no way in hell this could be a well-oiled machine. I'm coming from an IT background, and I'm seeing all the work we did to set it up, to get 50,000 people in that group. And that was back when you used to be able to add thousands and thousands. Like, there was no restriction of how many people you could add at a time. And we had several accounts before a bunch of them got disabled, because he had a bunch of accounts that he was kind of like, he'd go rogue on. Anyway, we used those accounts to populate those groups. And then we created the meal plan, and we were selling the meal plan, and he was giving it away sometimes. And I was not too happy about, with all the work we did, that it was, sometimes it was to get the followers, and sometimes, you know, like he just had his own way of doing things. And if I tried to question or even come up with suggestions or offerings or ideas, he wasn't always amenable to listening to me. It was my way or the highway. And I'm like, you know, we are a team here. And then when he wanted something, he would act like, oh, I would never take the group from you. I would never take the social media from you, because it's just as much yours as it is mine. And then to play the little head games and the mind games and the control stuff, ooh, he was dirty. He was dirty. And when I say he was dirty, he assumed that because he thought that way, he thought I was that way. And I was like, really? I wasn't that vested. I was vested in serving and helping to uplift humanity, because that's always been my focus and my goal. And when I started doing videos initially, it was because of the themes and the intuition and the messages that I get from my spirit guides, that I wanted to share what I was downloading and what collective consciousness was telling me was the theme of what was going on with humanity. And so I invited him down here, and we did this whole play out, oh, where's Tom going? And a lot of people knew what it was. And when he got here, I made one mistake. Number one, it had been a long time since I had been in a relationship. I'm human. I'm a very sensual, sexual being, and I'm very in touch with my body. And I'll tell you right now, he was teasing and doing all this crazy stuff on the videos with me, and I started to fall for him, of course. And it was always, I love you, even before we met. So he acted like, well, it's kind of like we've been dating anyway. So when he arrived, I got intimate with him way before I should have. And it wasn't anything to write home about, because unfortunately he's got some issues in that department. At least with me, he did. And I believe the real reason he had issues in that department is even because his dick knew it wasn't meant to be inside of me, because I'm an alpha and he was a beta, and I needed to throw that fish back to sea, and I didn't do it soon enough. That's one thing I will say. So as a result of that, and I will tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, when someone already feels unable to perform, that enhanced the control issues. And when someone can't get in you, they will try to fuck with you and get into your head. And that's one thing I did learn about this relationship and narcissism. If somebody cannot fuck you physically, they will try to fuck with you. And that's psychological, because of their psychological fucked up shit. So I realized that, and thankfully I was already part of a Beyond Addiction, an addiction facilitating program. So I could see through a lot of what was going on, but in some ways I was really trying to work through it. And in some way I thought I could somehow help him heal. But the problem is when a man doesn't show interest in the interests that you have in your life, that's another sign. Even though he claimed, oh, you're so good at what you do, and he claimed that he was inspired and impressed by my daily practice, he also tried to get me to compromise it, and that was my non-negotiable. There were several times I'd be sitting on my mat and he'd walk over and says, you need to stop. I need you to do such, such, and such. And I'd be like, no, I don't. And he got up in my face so many times, and I'm like, no. I stood my ground, and he was pissed because he couldn't manipulate or control me on most of the cases that he was trying. Living with him was like walking on eggshells. You didn't know if he was going to be, he'd start out kind of like, some mornings he'd just crank up all the lights. No consideration for the fact that I was trying to sleep and that I was up later than he was, because I was still editing videos to upload to our social media. Those were the kinds of things I dealt with on a regular basis. Or the mornings when I'd have to get up and I'd have to go teach sadhana, and he'd get up in the middle of the night and he'd do all this crazy shit, making noise, no concern for my sleep. But if I made any noises when he was sleeping, he'd throw and pitch a fit. And I got a whole lot less sleep than he ever did, because he'd nap during the day too. So on top of that, plus I was teaching, plus I was involved with the teacher trainings and the Beyond Addiction and the community, the stuff that I do on a regular basis. I would be preparing the food, I would be buying the food, going out to the stores and purchasing it, coming back, cleaning the house, because God forbid if I could actually get him to clean, because he'd get mad if I even suggested and said, could you take care of this? If it wasn't done, because I just say, hey, here's how I like to do it. I'm just giving you a heads up, because I think that's effective and I think that's reasonable, don't you? Here's what I like to have cleaned up. Could you take care of this for me? Here's what I'd like to have done. I mean, the fact that I even had to ask was pretty fucked up. And that when I did ask, sometimes he'd pitch a fit so he wouldn't have to be able to do it. Getting to even, because when he said he was coming down here, he's like, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of the floors, I'll sweep, I'll do all this stuff. How many times I had to ask? It wasn't like I could get him to do it every single day. And that would have been helpful. Just the little things. And he'd take the longest hot showers to the point where the bathroom was so steamed up. It was like walking into a sauna and everything was dripping wet. Like, I didn't even take showers that long. Anyway, these were just some of the little nuances going on behind the scenes for anybody who's wondering. I can't count the amount of times he would eat something of mine that I had prepared, because I didn't have a whole lot of time for myself, because he was always giving me something to do, and I was vlogging every day, taking small videos here, small videos there, and clipping them all together. And sometimes those videos they were all day occurrences, just to render it and everything else. And God forbid if the video didn't render, and then it already took an hour or 2 hours just for it to, what we say, render, meaning it has to save after all your edits. And when that didn't happen, starting all over again, And then he lost a GoPro. The GoPro that he claimed that was mine, he took and he lost it. Anything he gave me, he took back. He was an India giver in that respect. Like, I mean, I don't know how much stuff I bought and paid for. And there were a couple times he ran out to Lowe's or Home Depot, didn't ask me, didn't consult with me. And he'd purchase something using money I gave him and acting like I purchased that with my money. And then it was later I realized I just gave him more money after he told me that he paid for it with his money. So I purchased it twice, if that makes sense to you. Like, he was a total hustler, and I realized that later. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? And a lot of that was because out of trauma response, I realized that I didn't want to deal with his wrath and rage. Because I'm telling you, when he would pitch a fit, he'd turn it into an hour to 2 hour long argument. And when a narcissist goes off, the only way to get away from that is to leave, which is why I did a lot of walks and videos out by the waterfront with Buddy. Because the only way to get away from him was to literally walk out the door. And for me, if I get upset, I don't take it out on people. I get my shoes on my feet and out the door, and I exercise. I shake it out of my body. He wasn't even exercising. He wasn't taking care of himself. He didn't once come to one of my classes at the studio. I got him to sit down one time on the mat with me when he first arrived to do a meditation, which he couldn't even sit through. And it was a simple Kirtan Kriya. Satanama. He got up before it was finished, and it was only 11 minutes. He claimed all these things. He made all these promises. When we get to a certain point, I'll be able to go to the studio, and then I'll be able... He had that perfectionist talk. Everything that he said he wanted to do, when this happens, then I can do it. He claimed he was going to help me build up the back building. He didn't do a damn thing back there. He left me more mess to clean up when he left. He left me more messes and disorganized clutter and rubble and mess. I got more pavers and stuff back there that I'm probably never going to use. Now, when I say clutter, because he would get upset about some of my stuff, and I'm like, at least my stuff's organized. I would go to try to organize. He had the egg crates, and he had a few screws in each of all different stuff, like in a big egg crate. And I'm like, let me organize this. He would have several of those and all this stuff strewn about. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this goes to. None of this makes sense. Don't move anything because I know where everything is. Well, what the hell is it? And he didn't know. His memory was... He couldn't remember even half the stuff he did or where he put stuff. He was constantly missing stuff and misplacing. And like I said, he lost an earbud from the earbuds that I bought him. He lost the GoPro Like for him, it was no big deal because he didn't pay for a lot of stuff. So he acted like an entitled child. He didn't appreciate what he had, but he sure as hell would bitch about a lot of stuff. He would complain about certain things about my home. And I'm like, what are you complaining about? He wasn't paying rent and he wasn't paying utilities. He wasn't paying for the food. So if you can understand that behind the scenes, the amount of stress, and the reason I'm sharing this is because what is projected and shown out in social media is not real life. And for anybody who is watching, and I know there's people that were able to see between, they could read between the lines. They could see that something wasn't right in the relationship, that the behaviors and when there was a rub or there was tension in the videos. You could tell. I mean, it didn't take a rocket scientist to see through some of the bullshit. And even watching some of my videos out by the waterfront, and everything's on the Ridiculously Authentic Facebook page and on the social media YouTube, because, by the way, he owns that, and it takes at least 1,000 followers for YouTube to monetize on. And so he's able to monetize on all the videos that I did, and I'm having to rebuild this. So, I mean, what I tell my story, and this is going in a book because there's a lot more to this story. I want you to understand when you see somebody out there and you think their life looks perfect, or you envy them, or you're jealous of them, thinking they have something that you think you lack in your life and you secretly want, take a step back and ask yourself, because this is a humbling thing. Is it what they have that you want? You know, that lack mentality, the envy, which is not a healthy thing. Because a lot of times people want what somebody else wants, and that's the reason they follow them. That's not a healthy reason to follow somebody. The person you follow and aspire to be like and admire should be somebody who leaves you feeling good about yourself, that gives you inspiration and uplifts you. Not this, well, if I watch them, maybe I'll figure out how they got to where they're at, and I can also be like that. So they have something you want. You have to really check yourself and recognize what is your inspiration, what is influencing you about the person. What in them do you see that you don't recognize is in you? Because what we see in another, the good and the bad, is in us too. What you like or dislike is a part of you too. We mirror and project. And often when we're hurt and we have trauma, we don't see that we're recognizing that in the other person. That sometimes the trauma within you is really attracted by that person that you're witnessing and you're following. So a lot of people were following because they wanted to see him fail. And I know that. And then he had a lot of girls that were, oh, Tom is so cute. And they fawned over him. That's one of the stress responses. But what they didn't see was that's probably, most likely, their own trauma. That if they found him attractive, that's probably a pattern in their relationships, the toxic relationships. That whatever that little thing, that the glimmer that he catches them, is part of the hustle that they've been taken advantage of by. I mean, I have to own that. I have to own that I allowed this person to infiltrate me and convince me that they actually cared about me, that they were actually going to support my vision and help me to do retreats and to be an influencer, to help people. Like, if you think about this, he was such a competitor of mine that he never actually helped me to be successful. He fought with me, which made it more tension, which made it more difficult. You shouldn't feel like what you're doing is hard work because of the person you're working with. You should feel energized when you're done. But with him, I felt exhausted and depleted because he was stealing and robbing me of my energy and life force. Because he didn't want to see me succeed. Honestly, I didn't realize till later what it was is he was competing with me. He wanted to be front and center, but he wouldn't own it. He didn't actually admit it. I had to figure it out by his behavior. that he secretly harbored resentment because what came easy to me took a lot of work for him because he deals with anxiety. And even being on the camera, sometimes he didn't want to be on the camera because, yeah, he could kind of perform and he could give you a persona. He could do his Twiggy or his Ziggy or whatever personality, put on a wig and play a part. But to be genuinely him took a lot of effort for him. I know that because of his own traumas. So I witnessed his weaknesses. I saw some strengths in there. He was really good at some things. But instead of owning those strengths and focusing on those, he tried to control me to uplift himself through his weaknesses. So he felt like if he could bring me down, it would elevate him, which is the worst. That's the worst behavior you could ever exhibit with anybody. That's not a healthy relationship. And so with this social media realm, when you see followers, and this is basic psychology 101, just because I have a huge following, don't assume that that's an organic following. I learned back when we first started, we didn't pay to get followers. I tell you right now, that was all organic. We worked our asses off. We went into groups. We joined groups. We followed pages. We would watch people's lives. This is on top of our own work. We would communicate and write with people. We would friend people from those groups and from those people's lives because they were in the same kind of genre and because I was doing meal prepping, raw vegan recipes. I was doing yoga. I was giving free meditations and yoga work videos. I was also doing nutritional suggestions and offerings as well as essential oils. I mean, I pretty much have the whole gamut. Lifestyle is my forte. And telling my stories from the military, and even some of my own past traumas, as well as reading oracle decks, card readings, doing hook'ems and reading from some of my books. I did a lot. And then my little skits and this and that. Food nutrition, you know, like superfoods, talking about things like purslane, which is one of my favorites, you know. Don't eat the fishies, eat your purslane. It's really good for you. It's high in fatty omegas. So, you know, it's like I had fun with a lot of that stuff. But it became exhausting when I felt like I was in a constant fight with the person who claimed that they were there to support me. And that anytime I disagreed or I tried to offer, you know, I'd like to do this, he had me working like a freaking mule. He was always adding to my plate. He wasn't taking anything off my plate. He wasn't doing anything to make my life easier. On top of me, like I said, preparing food for him all the time. And he ate me out of house and home in the first couple months. And then after a certain point, he got so nasty because of the whole sexual thing. In the very first couple weeks, he flipped out on me. And that's when I knew something was wrong. I knew he had trauma in the sexual arena because he flipped out on me, and I knew it was because he was unable to perform with me, and he started taking it out on me. And I joked about something, and he literally blew up at me. And I was like, I should have actually known from that point that it wasn't going to work. I did know, but I was already deep in with all the work we'd done. I didn't know what to do at that point. And he tried to belittle me because of it, but I just... it was not my problem, period. And then he proceeded, after a few months of whole foods and plant-based eating, that he was sick of it. You know, he wanted to eat his yummy nastiness. And he used his food addiction to fast food and the toxic foods that, let me tell you, that was a whole nother realm, because when he ate that food, it literally took over his brain. The whole like morphing of his addiction to yummy nastiness, the Burger King, the Sonic, the McDonald's, you name it, whatever the heck he was eating, I had to deal with the fallout. And that was really what escalated everything else that I was dealing with. In fact, that's the big deal right there. And then he was using his credit card, so it wasn't like he was paying for it, because then he defaulted on all of his credit cards. His car was towed, tried to blame it on me because he was financially irresponsible, claiming, oh, but I've had all this money and I've been all successful. He talked more about his success than he actually did prove his success to me. And talking about how he's so good at his social media, but yet he wasn't helping and we didn't advance where we could have, because again, he was talking about his success and not proving it. He wasn't walking his talk. And I was trying to keep the show going because I was the front and center and I was always on the camera. So when people have a huge following, I'm not saying in the case of us, because like I said, it was organic. A lot of people buy. And back in the day in Facebook land, back before they locked down on the bots, it was all set up that they created the bots. Come on, you know, let's get real about this stuff. I'm an IT person. It's no different than when Microsoft was on what was it, the congressional hearings. The same thing happened with the 𝒐𝒏. Same scenario. All dog a pony showed. It didn't mean anything. So people were buying their followings on Facebook and Instagram. And I didn't know how bad it was until we started working together. And I tell you, before we started working together and I was doing my retreat stuff and I was trying to set it up so that I could get my retreat off. I was supposed to be going to Italy in 2017. And because I didn't get enough people and it was kind of last minute, I didn't have a whole lot of time to plan. I paid for advertisements through Facebook and I was like, you know what? I'm never doing that again, because I didn't see organic. I had a whole bunch of Indian people that came out of that and it didn't do any good for my retreat. Like, I wasn't looking for followers that were trolls and robots. I was looking for organic, actual people who wanted to go on a retreat to Italy with me for my yoga retreat. And because of that, I was like, oh no, I'm not playing that game, because I could see that it was all numbers and it wasn't actually real. So one of the things I've learned witnessing the social media realm and the people and the behaviors, and especially working with him, was that people will follow for different reasons. And a lot of times hurt people will follow hurt people and they don't realize that they're attracted, like attracts like, and that the energy that they're not owning in themselves is what they're attracted to in someone else. So again, this is projection. Like attracts like. Your vibe attracts your tribe. And so he was attracting all sorts of people who liked him based on their trauma. And then there were people who hated him. And when he went to Hawaii, man, I had to do mission control. I had to do all the damage control because he had people chasing him who wanted to see him in harm. They wanted to attack him, beat him up. I mean, honestly, I actually was afraid for his own life because I was fearful something was going to happen to him, because he was such a loose cannon and he acted fearless, but he was afraid. He was call me and be like, I'm really worried because people are following me. And he was in fear. And I paid for, that was the other thing. So he would do GoFundMes when he wanted money, but he didn't do a lot of GoFundMe to help me support me. Yes, he helped with the GoFund for my mom, which I didn't ask for him to do, by the way. And even though he helped me with that, he didn't help me with the things that were in my dreams. He did that because it got us attention. That was really the motivation for him in that. It may not sound like it. Because it gave the appearance that he cared, because in a certain way, maybe there was a little remorse and a little emotion, because when we first started on the trip up to Omaha, I could see that he was thinking about his mother with her cancer. But at the same time, to be totally honest with you, in retrospect, and all the stuff that I had to deal with him and his tantrums while I was dealing with a whole grief of my mom and my family and having to be the one to step up with everything, I look back and I just see it as him finding ways to bring us more attention and get more followers. And that was the easy way, was to make it look like we're really trying to raise money for Lana and her family, and never really considering that he never tried to help me with my dreams. He wanted to go to Hawaii, so he raised money. But I still ended up footing the bill for, let's see, about $1,500, if not more, of his trip. Not including paying for all the social media account stuff, like, you know, our MailChimp, which he took that too. So I had saved all these addresses, emails, and then he took it and went when he cut me out of everything. So all the work I did, he got to profit from in the end. And then he went to Hawaii. He ended up, I mean, because that was the other thing, is William ended up buying a whole brand new bike to bring over to Hawaii, because he couldn't bring the one that he had originally bought here. So he got a free bike out of the deal. And then he ends up giving it away instead of going, hey, I was mad because he didn't pay me back any money. Plus, on top of the $1,500 plus, I also paid for his plane ticket to come back here because he was crying about everything he was going through. He literally was crying. And then he tried to pull a power trip with me. So he comes back here and I'm like, you know, I wish you had sold that bike. Oh, but the people who donated money, I have to put on a show for them. They would probably be upset if I'm like, are you kidding me? That money could have been paid back to me for all that I paid for. I'm one of the people that contributed too. How do you think I feel? He was more concerned about what our followers thought than what he was actually doing to me. He was all show, but behind the scenes, he had no integrity and alignment with any of it. And it really saddened me because I'm like, what did I get myself into? And when he came back here, so that he got back here in November, December, beginning of December of 2018. And he treated me like crap during the time I was dealing with the grief of my mom. During all that time, he gets to go to Hawaii, and I'm over here grieving my mother's death. And at one point he says, how long are you going to milk that? And I was like, no, you fucking didn't say that shit to me. I don't put up with that. My mom was like my best friend. And so he came back. And one of the main reasons, I'll be honest, one of the reasons I actually had him come back on top of his crying was because I needed somebody to watch Buddy while I went to Lake Wales. Otherwise, I look back and I think, you know, I should have left his ass in Hawaii. I really wish I had. Would have been a whole lot less stress for that last year. Because what landed me in the hospital for my appendectomy was a fight. And that was another example of where he cut me out of our social media once again. The night before, I had just come back from it was actually a networking event where I got to network with some local people. And there was a man who was there talking about branding, and he was really insightful, and he'd worked for various companies over the years, and he had a good 40 plus years of experience, and he'd worked with some pretty high up marketing people. I came back so excited, wanting to share what I had learned, and Tom flipped out on me. He was like, who's the social media expert here? I've got over 11 years of marketing experience. And I'm like, I'm not competing with you. I'm sharing something that could help us. Well, then you just take care of all your own stuff, because I've been over here. What's the sense of me working to take care of you and do all your stuff? I'm like, oh, he wasn't doing all my stuff, but he would talk it up as if it was all him. And that was what was so aggravating, is dealing with the constant loose cannon, somebody who would fly off at the drop of a dime. And I tell this story because I want people to understand what you see on camera with social media. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. What appears to be perfection, whether we filter the picture or we edit and filter the write-up, could be so much more than you realize. And that there's a lot of abuse and a lot of toxic relationships, and everybody's trying to navigate their lives the best way they can. I didn't even want to come back out of the hospital, straight up, because to me it was like having a vacation. And I didn't know what I was going to come home to, because he promised, oh, I'll take care of you. He came to the hospital maybe twice out of 10. I was in there for almost 2 weeks. And one of the things is because I had a retrocecal, which means that the appendix was actually growing on the back side of my intestine. Because of that, I was in so much extra pain in my lower back, even though the doctor acted like I should have been able to go home right away. I was like, but I got this back pain and I don't understand it. Well, it was because it wasn't your standard appendectomy. It wasn't like you just clip, snip, and pull it out. They had to actually solder it off of the back of my large intestine, which left a lot of scar tissue, and I'm still trying to heal through that. When I came home, the things that I did not discuss about the situation, I was very tender. I was very sensitive to noises. And once again, I already expressed, he had no consideration for when I was sleeping. He had no consideration for the way he walked. He would leave, like when he would step, he would pound his feet, and I'm like, it would pound my head. So when I made requests, could you please keep it down? At a certain point, he got sick of me even complaining. I mean, I wasn't complaining. I was making requests, mind you. And I was always very neutral in my expression and communication. I'm like, honey, you've got to be really soft on your feet, and then he flipped out on me. He flipped out on me the first time he flipped out on me, and I went off on him. I was also doing laundry. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I was always doing laundry. I went out to put the laundry in the dryer. He got up in my face because he was confrontational. He wanted to pick a physical argument with me at that point. And I looked at him and I said, get out of my fucking face. And he just was like, he literally chest bumped me like, what are you going to do about it? I said, get the fuck away from me. Get away from me. Because I was mad that he had the audacity. I was the one in pain. And I slammed the dryer door and accidentally swiped across his balls because they were always hanging out. Not that he was naked. That's not what I mean. And he got pissed off as if I had hit him. And then he got real up in my face. I'm like, get the fuck away from me. That shit wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't been in my face and been confrontational. Trying to act like a big man with somebody who's sick. Like, really? And then he left. He went in the other room or whatever, pissed off. That was the first time. The second time was because of the toilet being clogged up. That's a whole nother conversation. Because I deal with constipation, okay? Sometimes the toilet gets stopped up. It's a real thing. It's embarrassing. This guy never once cleaned a toilet. I mean, he didn't even know how to plunge the toilet and then like try to make me feel bad for backing up the toilet. He got up in my face again one other time and was like threatening me. And I was like, okay. And I didn't say anything. And I was thinking in my mind, this is it. There were 3 times and I was like, third time, I'm done. This guy's leaving. And I had already given him a heads up, and he's like, well, I need to find a place. It got to the point on the third time that I had a conversation with a friend. I said, listen, I don't have the time or the energy or the patience any longer or the tolerance to have to sit through another 2 to 3 hours that if I try to ask him to leave, he will proceed to turn it into an argument and flip everything. Because I had asked him to get a job and he flipped out on me. That was the third one. That's what it was. Acting like, how dare I ask him to get a job? What about you, he said. What, I'm not working? I'm the one paying for everything. This isn't about me. This was about him. And he proceeded to go in the group and actually make a comment, a post under our mutual account, which was really mine, and proceeded to say that I had asked him to get a job to pay off my bills, which were a result of him. And so he never offered to help me pay the bills that he racked up. No, in fact, he defaulted on all of his credit cards and his bills. He had racked up thousands of dollars. I don't know how many, but I know that he went to Best Buy and got a whole Apple laptop, and he went and racked up, I don't know how many credit cards he had before that. So he probably had over $10,000 to $15,000 worth of credit cards built up, plus the vehicle that was impounded. It's like, take responsibility for the energy you bring into my house. And from that point on, I will never invite anybody else. I had a second occurrence this past year, which interestingly enough ended up putting me in a car accident, but we're not going to have that conversation right now. And I immediately kicked that person out. I had to have my friend come over so that when he came over to the house, And Tom came, something happened to where Tom went out of the house, like, and he was gone because we had a fight again. And so my friend comes over and I said, listen, I just need you to be present because I need a man in the house so that I have somebody to witness. And so he doesn't flip out on me and I don't have to deal with the shit. He came in the door and my friend was sitting there with his arms crossed. And he was kind of, because he would behave around strangers. He would put on a show like he was all prim and proper because he worried about what people thought about him. And he struggled with anxiety and being around other people. So he comes in the door and he's kind of like, something's up, and he knew it. And I said, we have to have a conversation. It's time for you to leave. Oh, well, I need to find a place to live. You know, like I told you, I need some time. I said, no, I need you to get your stuff and go now. So he grabbed a duffel bag and he grabbed some things. He didn't grab everything because I caught him off guard. He wasn't all present in his head. Now, mind you, he was gone. He went to a homeless shelter and I saw he ended up going and drinking, which, by the way, he was also an alcoholic, claiming to be an alcoholic and sober and claiming he used to smoke cigarettes and all these other things that he used to do. He used to be, you know, addicted to different drugs and substances. So he goes over to the local VFW, and I know he smoked and he drank and he fell off the wagon, and he came over within, I think, not even 24, 36 hours or something like that. He shows up in the middle of the night, wakes me up, and I knew, because I was intuitively able to pick up on this, I knew something was coming. He shows up, I had the doors locked, and he's begging to come in. He's begging and claiming he's going to do whatever it takes. And I said, no, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear you. He would not let me sleep. Once again, another no respect for me, just all about him. Even at one point, prior to all this, he had the audacity to say, what if something happened to you? You know, what about putting my name on the house because it's my house and it's paid for? And I didn't even entertain that with a yes or a no because I'm like, you think I'm stupid? I'm not ignorant. Why would I put somebody's name on my house deed when you don't even pay for anything, right? So he did leave, and like I said, he comes back whining and promising he wants to come back and he'll do whatever it takes. I said, nope. And then he's like, come on, I got to use the bathroom. I got to take a shower, you know, like whining about, you know, because I can't live on the streets. And he was, you know, he'd always say, oh, I could get by anywhere. And then he's admitting that he's a puss, that he can't live on the streets, and that he'd be, you know, something would happen to him. Like he owned it. He was actually being a little vulnerable there. Or he was doing his hustling and just trying to make me feel bad about the situation. So I ended up said, if you want to take a shower, you can go out in the back building, because the back building was not in the greatest condition, but there's a shower back there, and I know he could take a shower back there. I said, you're not coming in this house. And then at the point when he was done, and I turned around and I said, you need to go to the VA and get your disability because you got some serious PTSD and some mental issues. And I'm not putting up with this shit anymore. I said, you give me a hard time about getting my disability, and I spent over 10 years. You did 4 years, and you're basically living off of me and my disability and what I get. You need to go get it. I let him come back. Actually, that was before I asked him to get a job. That's what it was. That's when it was done. Because it was the first week of November, and he maybe was in the house for like not even 10 days. And my girlfriend, we did like a ceremony over here, so we met some of my girlfriends, and one of my girlfriends said, Lana, he needs to get a job because he needs to feel like he can contribute and like he needed some sense of pride. Like she was smart enough to see that. And I'm like, I know, and I agree with you. So when I came home after having a conversation with her and I asked him to get the job, and like I said, he went on social media and he made all this ruckus, he started a fight with me. He tried to flip it around on me like I was confrontational with him and telling him what to do. I said, no, I need some help. I said, you're unwilling to contribute. And that's when he was like, that's when he ended up going to the homeless shelter. Because he preferred to be homeless than go get a job. If that tells you anything about the personality I was dealing with. But one of the things with social media with him he would go on social media and talk shit about other influences who he didn't even know. He'd want to collaborate with people, but only if it gave him clout and attention. Like he'd act like he was listening, but he was just trying to put on a show. He was trying to get people to like him. So that was one of the things. Hurt people hurt people. He'd talk about, you know, nourishing your garden and flowers growing and how, oh yeah, keep going, keep growing. But yet he wasn't doing any of the healing work. He wasn't doing anything to evolve. No personal development on his part. Instead, he was trying to control his environment because he didn't have control over his inner environment. So sometimes what you see out in social media land is actually just a show. And what that show is they know, and especially in his case, you don't know me. I can show you whatever I want to show you. Because there's this screen between us, and you'll never know unless you ever meet me in person. And there were only a few people that met him in person that were part of our group. We had a woman from Canada come down, Paula. Love Paula. You probably see this, Paula. And she got to kind of witness a little bit, and she got a little bit of a, and I know she noticed that he was telling me to do all this stuff. And he wasn't really doing a whole lot. Like, it was just, here, you need to go take her out and do all this stuff with her. And the thing was, he never actually asked me. This was after my mom passed when all that went down. And I wasn't prepared to host anyone. I felt really caught off guard from that. So when Paula came here, I wanted to entertain and spend time with her. But I also was dealing with my own grief and everything that I was dealing with him and his personality bullshit and his temper tantrums. That I'm like, ugh, I barely have the bandwidth. And she was here because she came to my workshop, and I really appreciated that. So I'm very grateful to her and her support over these years, because she's an amazing woman and she's just a powerhouse in her own right. And I'm just grateful for the people that have continued to follow me. I've had people reach out and check on me. Some people even reached out and said they thought he got back with me. And I'm like, no. In fact, whoever's starting rumors and gossip, that's another thing. With social media, people create stories about you that aren't even true because they don't even know you. So that's another thing. And I had a stalker. Somebody who was sending letters to the studio. It was creepy. I filed a report with the police, the local police department, because not only did they send letters to my studio claiming that we were toxic and that I was in love with the narcissist. Like, it was really weird. It was weird what they wrote. I got a letter at my house, and that's when I'm like, you know what? I know it's not difficult to figure out where I live, but you are sure as heck not going to send a letter to my house and I'm not, and then think that I'm going to just sit by idly. So I filed a report, and I made copies of all the letters, and I sent them to the police officers so that if anything were to happen and someone showed up at my house, at least I covered myself. So there was that. Buddy, he always used Buddy as an excuse. Oh, Buddy's got this issue. When in reality, Buddy was dealing with the anxiety of him, because poor Buddy, he's got an itch. He's got like a scratch response when he stresses or he gets nervous. He gets a nervous tick. And I know that was because of being around him. There were times I know he left the dog in his apartment up in North Dakota, because I offered to go up there to help him prepare and come down here. And he didn't want me to come up there. I was like, oh, okay. And then he complained to me about how they took his security deposit. See, this is another example of being irresponsible. He said they got mad at him. He got fined a couple times because apparently the dog poop was out on the porch or something outside. And so they fined him. And I don't really know the full story about that, but I know this. If you took care of and you cleaned up after yourself, there's no reason why they wouldn't have given back his security deposit. But after he moved in with me and I saw his inability to clean and maintain and keep things tidy, He'd have piles of clothes. He would, the kombucha explosions, he blew up kombucha on my walls. My white walls were covered with all sorts of sticky. He didn't clean up after himself. Even when I came back from my mom up in Omaha after she passed away, the dog had gotten locked into the house. It was, my bed was trashed. There was dog shit all over the floors because he was dealing with that. And I'm the one who ended up cleaning it up. Anytime it was related to something like that, I was the one left cleaning up the mess. He didn't ever offer. He just went in the other room and went to sleep like an asshole. And I'm sorry to say, showed all his true colors in that one. All of it. So personalities, because life is a cult of personalities, people will show you what they want you to see. And I'm not one to really tell a story without having a purpose behind it, because there was a lot of pain in what I went through. And I had to work through the resentment and the animosity and the fact that I had invested so much of my time, my energy. I was burnt out. I literally was so burnt out from being around someone who was literally a parasite, a vampire, physically, emotionally, mentally abusive, because they couldn't check themselves and be a human kind toward me. Like, I did everything trying to support his growth. And sometimes at my own expense, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have shown up at the having to call the ER, call 911 to go to the emergency room because of my appendectomy, my appendix. I was in so much pain, and that was just a buildup. And then for him to promise all these things, and he never followed through with anything. And that sucked, you know? Somebody tells you they're going to support you, that they're doing all this stuff for you, but they're talking, but they're not walking their talk. Like, that was a lot of stress on me. And over these years, I've been dealing with my own stuff and trying to figure out my own way. And because I didn't have the support I thought I had, I'm right now at this point in my life, I'm like, what is social media for me now? Because now I feel like it burnt me out so much. I got to start all over again. But I almost want to just create a website, or I don't know. Because I remember how much and how hard I worked when it was supposed to be a team. And to be totally honest with you, it's a lot of freaking work. And so I think I'm at this stage in my life where I really just want someone to help me. I want to work with people. I want to collaborate with others. I want to do something local, because this stuff can go away in a heartbeat. And I know, like, this past weekend, I had a rebirthing, and it went exceptionally well. I had a huge turnout, and everybody walked out really happy. And I was very grateful for that, because that's why I do what I do. It really is about, like, this weekend, it was unloading your unwanted, like really letting go. And I have no attachment at this point to what we did. I am going to take our meal plan, and I am going to take all of my recipes from it and create my own recipe book and my own whole food journey, and explaining what led me to that. But it took literally the wind out of my sails to the point where I haven't been as heavy on eating the way I used to prior. Like before, I would make all sorts of like cauliflower rices and tacos and sushis. I haven't done that in ages, because I prepared so much and it wasn't appreciated. It was neglected. It was taken for granted. It was just assumed, because I was so giving and I made it so easy, because I was doing it from my heart and I loved doing it. But when someone sucks you dry like a bloodsucker, like I said, a vampire parasite, you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this again for someone if this person didn't appreciate me? Like, I'm not saying that's what goes through my mind, but that's what causes trauma in people, when they have an experience where they gave so much of themselves and it was just taken without any reciprocity. Like, reciprocity is the cornerstone of our relationship. If you're not receiving as much as you're giving, and someone's not given as much as they're receiving, like that will be the demise of most relationships, is the lack of collaboration and the inability to cooperate is what sucks relationships dry. If you are in a competitive situation, if someone is constantly fighting against you, is not holding you sacred when you share your feelings and express yourself, if they're not supportive in what it is you claim you want to do and all they're worried about is what they want to do, those are all signs to run. Those are all signs to look in the mirror and go, what is really important to you? Because a lot of times we want to love someone, but we're so loyal to a fault, we don't recognize we're not loving ourselves first. You have to love thyself first to extend that to another. If you don't have compassion, patience, and kindness and love for yourself, how are you going to extend that to someone else? At that point, you're just neglecting yourself and using them as a distraction from yourself. And a lot of us have done it. A lot of times we look for the perfect partner to complete us, to fill the void that we're not willing to fill ourselves. And a lot of times that's what social media ends up being for people, is you will follow these big followings, these big influencers, because something is lacking in you. And if you don't consider what is that lack, you're going to look at that person like they have something you don't have. And the reality is you're seeing that mirror of yourself. So whether it's good or bad, whether you admire or you just despise it, whether you admire them or you despise them, they're both part of who you are, because you need to recognize the other as you, and what they mirror back to you is in you too. What they're capable of, what they're demonstrating, is what is just the tip of the iceberg of what you are capable and able to perform and do and bring out to the world. And a lot of times, if there's something in them that you're like going, wow, I want to do something like that, 9 times out of 10, it's probably something on your path, but it's not exactly what they're doing that you need to be doing. Don't think that's the end game, that because that's what they're doing, that's like the top of the ceiling where you can reach. You can go further, because I was having this conversation the other day. There is no original thought. I'm not saying go steal people's words and content, but when you look at what information is out there, we are always improving upon the past. We are always putting our spin, our essence into whatever it is we do, and it's been repeated over history, over time. History repeats itself. We see this. It's playing out all around us right now. We've been here before, whether in this life or in another. That is how this turns out. And so when you see these followers, you see these huge followings for these social media influencers that you're like, wow, I'd like to be like them, or they've got what I want. I want to live that way. Or, I want to feel the way they make me feel. I want to be that person. When you see these huge numbers, psychologically, there are many reasons why people follow people with big followings. Number one, it's basic psychology. Well, if they got a big following, then must be doing something. I need to follow them to figure out what it is they're doing so I can be like that. That's a basic psychology. The connection to them. Think there's an unconscious driver that says, well, maybe if I follow them, some of that will rub off on me. I'll figure out their secret sauce or their secret code, and I can be just like them too, and I can copy them. Nobody said that's going to work for you. You don't really know what it took for them to get where they're at. And like I said earlier, some of those numbers are inflated. They're bought. They're paid for. Some of them aren't. Some of them are organic. Or somebody got lucky with the video that went viral. Lucky. Because the algorithms, they cater to certain personalities and they cater to certain ages. There are reasons why people are allowed to get to certain points in influencer realms. Some of it's real and some of it is controlled. And not everybody's going to be able to see that. Obviously not, or they wouldn't have their followings. I'm not speaking negatively about it. I'm just talking about it so that people can be in awareness. that if you don't recognize why you are doing what you're doing, then anybody out there can influence you and pull you along for the whatever ride they've got you on. And so those psychological tugs, like, I want to be like that person. I'm going to follow them so that maybe somehow it'll rub off on me and I'll be just like them. Or maybe by the association that just because I follow them, I'll meet people through them and I can sell to them. Like, a lot of people do that too. Haven't you noticed? You'll go into a group or you'll follow certain people and they'll turn around and they'll reach out to you in the DMs like, hey, I got this product. Oh, I do this. Do you know, like advertising, like they're trolling you and they're trying to market to other people's people. And there's, you know what, whatever. It sometimes works. If it works for you, great. It doesn't resonate with me integrity-wise. In fact, when we had Ridiculously Authentic, that was the reason we would block people and kick them out of our groups. We didn't want to allow spamming or harassing or people trying to push products, especially in the network marketing realm, because I've been there, done that, and I find I just don't resonate with network marketing. The idea that you have to buy into a company to get a discount to me is, I mean, it's no different than Costco and BJ's and Sam's and a lot of other different, you know, like Overstock, and there's all this other stuff. But it's just crazy. You know, we buy into, and I'm not saying, I mean, we buy into clubs, we buy into associations so we can be rubbing elbows with people. Same scenario. Might not be on social media. You might want to do, like I did Date with Destiny, Anthony Robbins. I did the UPWs, and I used to volunteer and work on the fire team. You know, we do that because birds of a feather flock together. And if you surround yourself with people of like mind and quality, then yes, it helps elevate you. But you have to be in awareness of why you do what you do, not just blindly doing it. And psychologically recognizing that, you know, I want to hang out with this type of personality or these types of people because they're bettering themselves and they inspire me to be better. That's the reason you should be doing anything. That's the reason you should be putting yourself around those types of environments, those people, those places, those things, on social media, joining groups. Yes, pay for people's services because it takes a lot of time and energy to create all that. And you know, that's the other thing about social media. Clickbait. The different streams and the ways that they encourage people to, because it's psychologically based. They know you should offer a free product and then hook them with that free product and offer like maybe a consultation or a one-on-one for like 15 minutes and then pitch your real sale, which is, you know, like there's all this there's a lot of work to this. And a lot of people are successful doing that. And there's nothing wrong with it. But be in awareness of how easily and how much you really, really do admire the people. You know, some people just want free content too, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because believe it or not, there's tons of free content. But sometimes free content doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be successful either, because if you don't have the discipline to follow through all that free content, what's it going to do for you? And again, that's about you acknowledging whether or not you're willing, because I've paid for mentors and coaches over the years. And there's a lot of people, they don't want to pay for it, but they don't recognize, because they've never seen the benefits of it, how a coach and a mentor hold you accountable to follow through, to build a practice, a routine, a discipline. Because if you don't commit to something and have someone hold you accountable, free content's not going to do anything for you unless you have the motivation within you to use it and apply it. You can buy all the self-help books all you want, but unless you are, again, disciplined, single-minded focus is meditation, which means you can eye on the prize and you can follow the line to it. But a lot of times you really do need someone to push you, to encourage you, to hold you accountable. And if you're not able to do that for yourself, You're not going to be able to do it. And you have to own that. So when people have reached out to me about my coaching and then they're like, what, you expect me to pay for it? I'm like, you think what do you think I'm living on right now? Because I have people who think that it's okay to come consult to me and, you know, call me up. I had to let some people out of my life because they were taken and they weren't reciprocating. They sure as heck loved it when I was available to them. And Lana, I need someone to talk to. And oh, what's going on in the collective? I'm having this going on. I'm like, I could send them all sorts of tons of information, but what good am I? You're not reciprocating, like, you're not paying for my services. And see, that's a funny thing. A lot of times people don't value you unless they're paying for you. They don't appreciate you till you're gone. Accountability is key, people. So, social media, it's not the end all or the be all. But being in awareness of why you do what you do is going to be key. And you know, again, if you're somebody who, when you're following somebody, recognize that when you're following someone, whether or not they actually engage with you. There's a lot of people I follow. I'll comment on their stuff. Some of them will respond and we can have a dialogue, and I really appreciate that because I know they've got big followings. But the majority of these people, not so much. I love Infinite Waters, Ralph Smart. I've been following him for so long, I don't even remember when I first started following him. Peace, infinite waters. Breathing in that good ass prana. I fucking love that shit. You know why? Because I feel that in my heart. And he's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful soul. And he speaks it like it is. And now when I listen to him, I love that we are on that same wavelength. And so I listen to him because he reinforces something within me. And he speaks this same language as my heart. The people that you follow, and when I comment on his stuff, he responds. I know that because he puts a comment. I appreciate you. Even if he pays someone to do that. And people do that too. You got 1 million+ followers. You may or may not comment on all of it. You may be paying people and just tell them, this is how I like you to respond. Awareness is key. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. And when you admire someone, just recognize that that's you too. And that the life you think someone is living is not necessarily all rainbows, butterflies, and unicorns. Because what is going on in the world? Yeah, diving deep. What is going on in the world? Whatever's going on within you is what you're seeing outside of you. Like attracts like. If you still got a lot of trauma going on, you're gonna attract to you more experiences to heal through that, to work through that. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff churning up, you know, trying to figure out, what do I want to do now? I really want to do my retreats. I want to create wellness events because lifestyle is, I want to see people designing their lives. Because you need to know yourself. You need to decode and research deeply. Who am I and what inspires me and what is my, weakness? What is my strength? I know I'm a natural born leader. I know I'm here to teach, to speak, to write, to convey a message, to talk about whatever streams through me, and whoever's meant to hear it will receive it. And to me, that's a blessing that I'm able to do that, even if it's one person. It may take me a lifetime to build up to what it is I envision, and I'm okay with that. But I want to feel like I'm doing what is in my heart and soul and conveying my essence rather than trying to force something. Because anybody out there that feels like it's exhausting, like I was doing with my last situation, that's not in your heart and soul, and that's not in your alignment. When your physical body gives up on you and becomes manifested in any form of dis-ease, that's because you're not in alignment with your head. Once again, that is my passion because I'm living it. I notice my body. I befriend my body is my best friend because my body speaks to me on a level that only my body can speak and cue me, signal, and get my attention. If you're not tapping into your body's wisdom, you're completely tuned out. You're going without. You are expecting the world to dictate to you, to navigate for you. And then in that case, you get hijacked every time. Whenever you don't go within, you go without. And in this world and in this time, you've got a role. You have a purpose. You have a gift. Don't let the past steal you of your present and the gift of the now. If anything, maybe disengage from all the social media for a week. See what it does for you and your social life in real life. Because the one thing that social media does is it robs you of your time and your life. We are social creatures. Humans are meant to be in unity. We're here to unite. Relationship, it's all about relating. Life is about relationship. We're not supposed to be up in caves, hiding out. Oh, I can be by myself. I don't need to be with anybody. No, what that translates to is I'm really not very good with other people because I'm not very good with myself. Because people don't realize when you don't want to be around other people because you're afraid of how they're going to mirror back to you. But if you're not doing the work within yourself, you're not working healing yourself, then you're going to attract people who are going to basically be that third party that I always talk about. Your inner child's going to say, you're not paying attention to me. I'm going to call in someone else, and we're going to act out an old scenario and see if you get the lesson again, if you get the message in the lesson. That's the only reason people fear communicating and creating new relationships. It's nice when you meet people the first time because then it's new. But then again, all the patterns will all come out if you haven't worked on them. Whatever confrontations you're avoiding, whatever you're suppressing, denying, rejecting within yourself are going to show up outside of you. Why? Because if you didn't learn the lesson, it's time to get triggered and bring it back out. So whatever surfaces, whatever triggers you is your work to do. You don't blame the messenger. You don't blame that other person. Ask yourself, been here before, just a different person showing up. Might be the same person. But if you keep reacting, that's playing out your karma. You're not going to heal your past. You're just going to keep capitulating and repeating because that's what we do. We humans, we're on repeat. And when you keep repeating things, you just reinforce it. The moment you change it up is when you also change up your karma. Karma is just repeating your old behaviors and being dogmatic about your beliefs. The only way to heal our ancestors, the generations after us, ourselves, and all of humanity is to get out of our karma, to stop repeating the same patterns of behavior. That's the lesson. So even right now, I will tell you right today, I was all geared to go to the Move Fitness Center this evening, but when it gets cold, sometimes I hermit. Sometimes I stay home. I didn't anticipate it. This video is a little longer than I anticipated. I've been kind of comfort food eating today, I noticed. And I think it was part of because I was a little bit like something started coming up for me. You know, like social media has been a struggle. And mostly because I feel, and I could be wrong, maybe this is a story I'm creating in my own head. I feel like I'm not as visible. Like all my stuff is shadowed. All my stuff is silenced. I feel like I could be wrong. That's the other thing. That's what it was. I was reflecting on this. It could be because of my past, you know. I've also known that people have deliberately tried to sabotage me. My ex-partner is one of them. It doesn't take much for people to report and cause problems for your accounts on any of the platforms. It only takes one malicious person who hides behind the keyboard, who just doesn't like you. Doesn't make them right. But just because they don't like you, they decide to be nasty. But then that's their karma. And in the end, the universe and God is always taking care of me and got my back, and I know that. So whether it's here or elsewhere, people get theirs, and I'm just not here to be a part of that. I don't want to cause problems for other people. I never once, see, when Tom actually blocked me from his accounts immediately after I said I'm done, he kicked me out of the group immediately and he blocked my accounts. And you know why? Because that's how he behaves. His fear is only a reflection of his inner hustle, his inner survival mode. So anytime he would block me or cause problems with my accounts was because he feared that I would do that to him, because that was his behavior. So knowing his behavior, I would not put it past him, because my TikTok accounts are also shadowed, and I had blocked him on one. I can't go over 2,000 people on the one account. Somehow every time someone subscribes or follows me, it seems to never go above 2,000. Figure that one out. People just keep dropping off, and that's, you know, a lot of times people don't take the time to unsubscribe. Once they follow you, they follow you. And people are kind of lazy like that. So you might stop following someone, or you might just not see them anymore. But same thing happening on my Instagram. I will see the followers go up, and then all of a sudden they're like trickling down again, even though I'm getting a lot of views on certain videos and things. So I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But it's psychological too, because that's the other side of social media that people don't realize. That I'm saying this because I've noticed the psychology for myself, that if I'm not getting a like, or I'm not getting followers, I'm noticing it. So that's the dopamine hit. They get you attached and addicted to the social media so that you don't ever want to stop. Like, you're constantly going back for more. And that's the whole part of the game. They need opposing fighting forces. They need the adversary, the villain, and the hero. So whatever it is you're attracted to, be mindful of that, because some of it's being orchestrated. So some of the people you're following, you may think they're on the up and up. They might be a controlled opposition, and be in awareness of that, because I've had to check myself on that this past couple years. Is it stuff that I thought I was so passionate about? I realized, oh, that's stealing me of my joy. I'm actually getting hijacked into something that really isn't serving. And if anything, it's suffocating and sucking the life out of me. So sometimes following people can also be debilitating. If you're following someone out of hate or malice, or if you're following someone out of extreme passion, it can be both. If you want to follow someone because you want to fight, you're feeding something with that. Those are those two wolves. Are you feeding the wolf of love, or the wolf of fear and fight? Because we're always operating from either one of those two places, out of fear or out of love. Are we in our head or in our heart? Are you a survivor or a thriver? Survivors are always fighting. There's always looking for the next meal. The survivor's always worried about something happening, anticipating the future, or even fearing because of the past they're stuck in. Whereas when you're in love, it's a neutrality, it's a presence. It's being in the gift of the present. Now. I'm here now in this. No matter what's going on, I'm going to be okay. So, the wolf pack, right? I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're having an amazing night. I'm kind of, I'm a little melancholy here and there. I have my moments. I was a little bummed, you know, for a while there. And I spent the past couple years really just kind of working through getting my mojo back. And I have been posting a lot more, and I really love doing these videos. I really do. I love to be able to share content, anything that will inspire people, and write. So I am writing, and I have a couple books. I don't know which one's going to come out first, because my writing style is different. And it may not be chronological. I might write one book and just be, you know, here are the lessons I learned during this time in my life, and the recipe book, for example, and my love affair with Naples, Italy, and my career in the military, and, you know, just growing up and all the different lives I've lived in this one. So much love. Again, if my messages, my videos, please share them, comment in the comments, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Let me know what you want to hear from me. Is there anything you want to know? Let me know. Questions, comments, concerns. I appreciate you. What else can I do? How may I serve? And if you're interested in coaching, reach out. I think it's, yeah, LanaALabonte@gmail.com. You can reach out there for coaching advice. If you're interested, I'll send you my rates. So much love, many blessings, and have a wonderful comment. I'm getting silly. Sweet dreams.